Twinings Irish Breakfast, I need your help. Wheel of Time is a show made for no one. This show appeals to absolutely nobody except for one person, that is Rafe Judkins, the showrunner. Nobody else is getting anything from this show. So this week, three really good shows were, well, not three really good shows, three big shows were coming out. Ahsoka, One Piece is really popular, and then Wheel of Time. And I don't know if everybody's watching those or just me, but those three shows together kind of gave me a bit of an idea about who are people making these shows for. I've talked about it before in the Ahsoka videos where it's difficult to tell, is that for new people? Is that for fans of the series? Filoni's not striking a good balance on that show. One Piece clearly seems to be made for newbies that have no idea about the anime, they don't have any backstory whatsoever, and they're just giving everything that you need and making it a really good time. I'm going to review that show. It's a lot of fun. Wheel of Time is for no one. They have no clue who they want to make this show for, because here's the thing. If you've not read the books, they're not explaining what's going on. So you have no clue what's happening, who's who. You might not even know some of these people's name, and you certainly don't know what their motivations are, why they're doing what they're doing, if you haven't read these books. And if you have read the books, this show is not for you, because you're going to be pulling your hair out seeing the absolute desecration of Robert Jordan's work. The completely off-book, divergent storyline that we have created, characters that are acting nothing like their book counterparts at all. So this show is for no one. This show is a vanity masturbation project for Rafe Judkins and Rafe alone. Let's just go through the 3 episodes and I will talk to you about how the story is diverging. If you've not read the books, I will attempt to give you context so you can tell what should be happening, even though the show did not take any pains whatsoever to tell you. And I'll also be explaining how these characters are acting nothing like the characters from the books. So let's just jump in. Episode 1, we open up with the weirdest damn scene. A little girl is playing outside of a building, and Trollocs show up. You're like, oh my god, she's gonna die. But she runs in the building, and what does she find? A whole bunch of people in cloaks, and they're all sitting around a table. Now, this is supposed to mimic a scene from the book where a man who calls himself Bors shows up to a meeting, an enclave of dark friends who are all serving this Dark One, and he takes a little while to look around the room, and he notices things about people, their dress, the way they're standing, where they're standing, and he's able to pick out, oh, that person is from Tyr, that person's from Ilion, that person is a Damani, all of these various things and characteristics that he can pick out. Now, we've talked before that that's impossible to do now, because every single place in this world looks like a college welcome pamphlet, looks like downtown LA, so you have no idea who is where. They don't differentiate anybody by looks or culture or dress or food or anything at all. They barely even do an accent for some of these people. So this scene is now reduced to just these people sitting around a table. You have no idea why they're sitting there. You just hear this guy from the last episode of season 1, Ishamael, and he's talking about how he wants to turn Rand to his own purpose. And he's explaining to everybody in the room that they are to look for these people. They're there to look for Rand and his 2 friends. Because at this point, they still aren't 100% sure who's who. And he is giving them all instructions, and he gives them secret instructions in their mind so that none of the others know what it is. And then at the end of that scene in the book, we find out that this Bors person is actually one of the White Cloaks. Remember them from season 1? Because you won't see them in the first 3 episodes of this season. They just kind of forget about them. And so it shows that these White Cloaks, even though their whole mission is to, eradicate the shadow and all that, the point of that scene in the book is to show that the shadow can infect anywhere. Anybody in any rank, anywhere in the world can succumb to some kind of lust for power or something, and they can be turned to the dark side, as it were. Even somebody, a high-ranking official in these White Cloaks. In the show, just people sitting around a table, and then the little girl runs under the table, and Ishamael looks under, and he's like a sweet old grandpa. He's like, oh, what are you doing? We're having a little meeting. Oh, little girl, hey, what's going on? And he's like, oh, let me guess. Something scary's outside, huh? And this girl's terrified. I'm thinking there actually is no ultimate evil, because they go outside and he is like, oh, you think these Trollocs are so scary, and he tries to make them sympathetic. He's like, oh, little girl, maybe they're not actually evil, maybe they're not actually twisted orc, horrible animal, human hybrid things that kill for fun and rip people to shreds. Have you ever considered maybe they're just hungry? Maybe that's all there is. And then he's like, do you think I'm a monster? You think I'm a bad person? and they're trying to do like this sympathetic thing with the bad guys, and it ends with them petting a Trollocs face, his bloody, disgusting face. Trying to subvert expectations with a sympathetic villain, hack writing 101, and I don't expect any better from these people. So we open up the season proper with Moiraine. She's pulling water from a well. If you recall, at the end of last season, she was cut off from the power by Ishamael, or who knows who the hell he is, honestly. But that guy with the goatee, the beard, he cut her off from the power, and now she is powerless. So she's hauling water up to this place, and she's filling a bathtub. And we get a little callback from the first season where she and Lan are taking a bath, and he's like, hey, it could be warmer, and she just puts her hand over it, and she warms the water. In this season, she obviously doesn't have any power, so we mimic that, where she puts her hand over the water, and nothing happens. So it's a nice little callback. That's actually really good. That's an interesting scene. That's a good use of a previous scene to show that, hey, she actually doesn't have any power. This scene goes on, well, like all the scenes, they all go on far too long. Like, we get it. She's sad. She's crying in the bathtub. She doesn't have any power. She shows she can't warm the water anymore. She shows she has to dig water up from the well. We get it. She's lost her powers. We can move on to the next scene now. We cut to Daniel Henney, who is playing Lan, and dude did some push-ups. He did some work. Man is looking real in shape, and it's a shame that he did all that work just to play a character who is going to get torn to bits in this season. One of their main focuses is to make Lan look as weak and pathetic as possible in this season. Once we see him working the forms, we cut then to a courtyard. Moraine's there, Lan is there, and these two older women wearing brown clothes. I think they get names. They speak to each other, so they say their names, and that's it. You don't get told anything. These are supposed to be Aes Sedai. They're two Aes Sedai of the Brown Aja, which are like a bookish group, and they're writing their own history of the world. They basically just kind of retired and went off to this villa to live together and write a history book, and they just kind of ended up living there forever and just kind of hanging out. You don't get told any of that. There's these two mystery women. Who the hell are they? You don't even know if they are Aes Sedai until the end of like the first or second episode when they actually use power, or when they introduce their warder, who is now a gardener. You don't even know who these people are, and you never get told who they are. Once again, if you haven't read the book, you don't know who these women are. You don't know how Moiraine got here. You don't know what their motivation is. You know nothing. And if you have read the books, this scene is ridiculous because they shouldn't even be here yet. Moiraine should not be acting this way. Moiraine should not be cut off from the power. None of this should be happening. You see how this is a show made for no one. We get a visitor that comes from Moiraine. Turns out to be Bail Doman. He's a sea captain of this ship, the Spray. I think he was in the first season. He features pretty heavily in the books, but I think they kind of cut him out of the first season. His only role is basically to start a trend that we're going to see all through these 3 episodes, and I'm sure for the rest of the season and any future seasons if they get to make them, and that is men are stupid. Now, you see often YouTubers, especially when we're talking about Disney, Marvel, Lucasfilm, everybody's like, oh, they hate men, it's all so misandrous. And you can make arguments back and forth. I think most of the times they're right, but in this show, this is the most egregious example of this new trend in movies and television where men are stupid, they're idiots, they're useless, the women are super strong, the men don't do anything. Any role that they had has been reduced to nothing. So the only reason Bail Doman comes here is to try to sell something to Moiraine and be smug and overconfident and, oh, I know how to play the game, I know I'm a good trader, blah, 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 and then just so she can outwit him. And he wants to sell her this piece of Quendiar that should be an important piece. We should know this is a very important thing, except, once again, they haven't given you any backstory. So there are 7 of these things, and they're supposed to hold the Dark One in prison, and this one is broken. That's a huge deal because one of the seals on his prison is now broken, but they don't talk about that at all. And then he tries to sell her a poem there was words written on the seal, which... No, there wasn't. And it wasn't a huge chunk of rock. It was a palm-sized thin disc. That's how it was described. And that's something else that bothers me about this scene is that the people making the show, there are very clear descriptions in the book about what things look like. So if you change them, you did it on purpose. You did it on purpose because you think you know better. And I told you earlier, you can't tell who people are because they don't dress different, they don't act different. This guy, Bail Doman, he is an Illiander from Ilion, and they speak a certain way. He's supposed to speak very piratey, which he sort of does in the show, but it's very pronounced in the books. And a very huge defining feature of Illiander mariners is they shave their top lip. They have a full beard, and they shave their top lip. How easy would it have been to have this actor shave his top lip so it would match the description of the book? And that's not some one-off description, by the way. That is a constant reminder. Whenever Robert Jordan, the author, would want to talk to somebody touching their face, especially this guy, he would stroke his bare upper lip. That is referenced over and over again. You're reminded that Ilianders shave their upper lip. It's a common fashion trend. But in the show, they're like, nah, we know better. We're not going to do that. So this scene, she swindles him out of the poem, making him think that she actually wants the rock when she really doesn't, and then she fools him because she's smarter, he's a dumb man, she's a smart woman. That's a pattern that's going to continue forever and ever with this show. And then, so that she doesn't look like the bad guy, he mentions that people are chasing him and he thinks it's her spies, and she's like, that's not my spies, what do they look like? And he describes what are obviously fades, and then she's like, here, take some money and get out of here. So she's still the good guy, even though she outwitted him, because he's just a dumb man. Now we pick up with Egwene in the White Tower. She and Nynaeve have made it to the tower after the events of last season, and they are now novices, which means they're the lowest of the low, and that is illustrated with Egwene. She's picking up cups and trays. She passes by Leanne in the hallway, and Leanne doesn't even look at her. She just drops something in her satchel that's full of cups. She's just like, here you go. That's what you're good for. You're just a servant. And the idea is that they're supposed to be like scullery maids to build character and let them know that, to kind of break them down. She goes to clean up some dishes from Alana's room. Alana is a green Aes Sedai, and green Aes Sedai have multiple warders, and they're very man-friendly. Like, they love men. They, it's very understood that they like to look at them, they're very interested in them, they like to have sex with them. That's the whole bit of the Green Aja, is that they really favor men, and they're like the warrior Aja. They're there to fight. That's why they have extra warders too, to fight with them. So she goes into the room and she's cleaning up the dishes, and what do we find? Alana and her two warders rolling around in bed giggling. This show needs you to know that this is a throuple. These are polyamorous people. It's very important that you know that. In the first season, we had these two guys cuddling each other at camp, and then we go, and the warder who killed himself, he was like, oh, I don't know, maybe I could join the Green, but I don't know if I could be with another man. Like, they need you to know that these Green warders are having sex with each other and their Aes Sedai. It comes up so often. Some of the scenes feel contrived just to reference back to that. Next, we go to the kitchen with Nynaeve and Egwene, and we start to really see how what happened in the previous season has broken this story in half, and now, if you haven't read the books, you have no clue what's supposed to be going on. So Nynaeve comes up to her, they're washing dishes in the kitchen, and she's like, hey, have you seen the Amyrlin yet? And Egwene's like, no, I haven't seen her. And then she's mad. She's like, oh, we've been here for 5 months, and we spoke to her one time. We, the audience, never saw that. If you read the books, you know that after the events of the finale of Book 1, they meet with the Amyrlin Seat. She's the leader of the Aes Sedai, and she gives them a secret mission, and she actually teaches them one night, and they have interaction. In the show, none of that has ever happened. So if you're watching this and you haven't read these books, and they're talking like, oh, we haven't seen the Amyrlin, oh, it's so frustrating, you're probably thinking, why would you be frustrated that you didn't see the queen of the Aes Sedai? Why do you think that you even deserve that? You've never been told why they deserve that. They just sort of assume that you know, but if you know, that means you read the books. That means you're as pissed off as I am. Of course, we never saw the Amyrlin go to Shinar at the end of the last season, so that means she never met with Rand. Nothing is working now because of the way they decided to diverge from the books from the last season. That's going to have long-lasting effects. None of this makes sense now. So they're talking in the kitchen, and Alana shows up, and she's going to do a little impromptu lesson. Now, I think this scene is completely contrived, but it does have a slight use. She takes some of the dirty dish water, and she pours it in a cup, and she's like, if you weave there's 5 different elements that they kind of control. And she's like, if you weave air and earth, or spirit and earth, one of the two, she's like, if you weave them together, you can form like a filter. And she pours the dirty water through her hand, and then it comes out clean the other side. And she tells them all, you need to do this now. Nynaeve, this scene also explains that she can't use the power. We don't really know why yet. That hasn't been explained like it should have been. But she just is uppity and refuses to do it. And she drinks the dirty water instead because she is so stubborn. Now, Nynaeve is the only character that I think acts like her book counterpart. I hated Nynaeve in the books. I actually want to criticize Robert Jordan. I don't think he did a good job with this character. She is insufferable in the beginning of the series. She's insufferable all the way through. And you think that she's going to get over herself and have some kind of growth, but I found her annoying all the way to the end, and I don't think that character was done right in the books at all. And it carries over in the show. She's annoying as all hell, so good job on that one, Rafe. At least you got this right. Shortly after that, Alana is explaining to the mistress of the novices that Nynaeve still can't touch the source, and we see this red Aja woman, Leandrin, who you know is a bad guy. She acts like a bad guy. She acts sneaky. She scowls all the time. Clearly is a bad guy, but she's like, I believe in this girl. Let me teach her. And we find out that she accidentally got somebody, a novice, killed, but the mistress of novices is like, well, you better try it because nobody else is able to break through, but you, Leandrin, maybe you can do it. So we've reacclimated to Egwene and Nynaeve being novices. We know Leandrin is this bad person. We have way more about Alana and her warders than we want to know, but that is their group. They're in the White Tower. They're training. We've covered that. Now we cut back to Perrin, well, what's supposed to be Perrin and Mat and Rand all trying to hunt down the horn together. And this is another area where the show completely falls apart because they never told you why the horn is important. They don't tell you what it's used for. Nobody explains anything about this. And so when it gets stolen at the end of the first season, you're like, okay, a fancy gold box got stolen. I don't even know what's in that box. They never tell you. So we go to Perrin, who is writing letters to Egwene and Nynaeve, which makes no sense because this horn has been stolen. And those of you that haven't read the books, the horn, when blown, is supposed to bring back great heroes of old. They come back from the dead to fight for you. So it being stolen by the Dark Friends is a serious problem because if the dark side were to use this thing, they'll fight for whoever blows the horn. So they're freaking out. Also, the person that stole the horn stole the dagger that Mat is like infected with and tied to, and the farther away from him it is, the more he is dying. So getting this horn back and getting the dagger back to save Mat's life is imperative. So nobody is stopping at camp to write letters. That scene makes no sense because everybody's just chill when in the book they are hounding. They are going so hard they risk killing their horses because they're pressing on too hard, and they realize like, oh my God, we're going to kill the horses. We're going to lose these people because we're going to lose our horses because they're so determined to chase after these people that stole the horn. But in the show, they're just on a little road trip, and you don't even know why they're on a road trip. So the group is hunting for the horn, Perrin, Loyal, and some of the Shienarans, but Rand is not there, and Mat is not there because of the stupid decisions that were made in season 1. And also, we haven't met Elias yet. We don't even know why Perrin is attached to wolves somehow. Why can he look at wolves? Why did his eyes turn yellow? We don't know, because we've never met the man that introduces him to this whole being a wolf brother thing, but we do now. He is taking the place of the sniffer. Those of you that read the books, you will recall that there was a man who could sniff when bad things had happened. He could sniff murder and theft and all kind of stuff. He was a thief taker, and he had this weird ability to smell when violence had happened. Well, he's gone because Rand's not there. So everything with him and Rand and Celine on the way to chase the horn, none of that happens because Rand isn't there. So why would it happen? So now Elias is the thief taker. He is the sniffer. I only know his name because I watch shows with subtitles on. I went back to make notes on this show. They did use his name one time. They greet him, hey Elias, but you don't know who this man is. It's never explained who he is. He just stands around staring at people in the most awkward way possible, and they never explain that he's connected to the wolves. Nothing. He's just there, and they're like, hey, he's a sniffer. They don't explain what a sniffer is. Nothing. They're just on the trail of something. You don't know why they're on the trail. There's no urgency whatsoever. Nothing. You know the reason none of this works? Because it's all dudes. So we don't really have to pay attention to these scenes because it's all men. Why should they accomplish anything anyway? That's the pattern that this show is established, is that when the women do things, it's important. When men do things and we don't want them to, we just take it and give it to the women. Like at the end of the first season, Rand doesn't win that big battle with the uncontrolled power that he wields now. Nope, it's the women. And here, the men are chasing after something. We're never told why it's important. It really doesn't matter. They're only there because they're in the books. And, well, those damn toxic fans would probably be mad if they weren't there. So I guess we'll give them a few scenes here or there. Nothing happens with these men. Not only do we not get Elias' name, we don't get anybody else. The leader of this band, I watched it again. I'm pretty sure nobody ever uses his name. That's Ingtar. He's leading this troop. He's supposed to be so just crazy to track these people down and get the horn back. It's like all that matters to him, where everybody else in the party's like, dude, you need to calm down. We're going to get it back. And he's like, no, we have to do it. He's the one that's like wanting to push everybody on, which there are reasons for that, but we don't even know what his name is. We don't know what his motivation is. We don't know anything about this guy. We also screwed up Loyal's character. Once again, they're sauntering along the road. Again, you would never know that they are like chasing down the most important magical artifact in the entire world, because they're just sort of sauntering along the road, and Loyal starts making fun of Uno. Now, Loyal has never made fun of anyone, ever. He doesn't know how. He doesn't understand how sarcasm works. He's the sweetest, gentle giant on the planet. But once again, because he's male, the showrunners said, screw this guy. He's going to be one of the douchebags, just like one of these coarse soldiers, and he's going to be ribbing the other guy and making fun of him for no good reason. That is not loyal. So the group of men approaches a village where everybody has died, and since Rand is not there to use the power to like see into the past and stuff, they just have Perrin do it. Because why not? Because all that really matters in this show is that every now and then they just throw you a little member berry. Oh, remember when they walk into a building and there's flies all over the table and then Rand sees the flashbacks? Well, Rand's not there, so Perrin can do it. Why not? No, it doesn't make any sense. This show is not even consistent with itself. If Perrin can see through wolf eyes, he can experience their memories. But unless they were in that building when the people got attacked, how would he be able to see it? It doesn't make sense. They don't even try to make sense. They're just like, well, this scene was in the book, so I guess we'll just throw it in here and we'll swap the characters out. Because who gives a shit? They're men. They don't matter. They don't accomplish anything anyway. We'll just swap one out for the other and move on. We cut back to Lan in the garden with the Browns and their warder, who in the books did turn into kind of a gardener. He just settled down with them, so he was a pretty chill guy, and he's acting very much like his book counterpart. And Lan is going to spend these 3 episodes just begging anyone to make Moiraine talk to him. She's shut him out. They don't have a bond anymore. Their mystical bond with each other, that has been severed. And he is just going to simp after her for all 3 episodes. He's going to have emotional outbursts when she won't talk to him. He's going to be sad. He's going to be withdrawn. He's going to tell people that, oh, she used to be my best friend. Now she's not. No, I'm just so pathetic. That is his entire character arc through these episodes. So we cut back to Nynaeve, and now she's sword training with the warders for some reason, with Alana's 2 bisexual warders. She's having a sword training battle with them, and they exist only to praise Alana and talk about how amazing she is and how much they're in love with her, and they don't allow anyone to speak disrespectfully about her. The scene is supposed to be about Nynaeve. They're telling her, you have to figure out why you're here, otherwise you're never going to make it. And they're like, when you're a warder, you're training, the only way that you survive the crazy things they do to us is if you remember exactly why you came here. And she's like, why'd you come here? And the one guy's like, well, I fell in love with this guy. And the other guy's like, I fell in love with a warder with Alana. And then the other guy's like, oh, you make me feel like such a third wheel. They're polyamorous, guys. They're bisexual. Remember? Isn't that cool? Isn't that hip that they're f***ing each other? Isn't that neat that they're together? It's a throuple. Remember? Did you catch that yet? Because we're going to talk about it again some more, but it's really cool. In case you weren't sure about Alana sleeping with both of them, we're going to talk about it again in this next scene. Egwene goes to her because she doesn't understand how the 2 weaves at once filter the water. She can't get it, and she's going to go ask Alana for advice. And this scene makes me think that the filtering scene was completely contrived. She goes in and she's like, hey, this morning I was so confused. How do you balance 2 things at one time? And Alana's like, oh, when you're with 2 partners, it's hard to focus on one. You just have to focus on your own sexual pleasure and let these men please you. Everything is about Alana and these 2 dudes. They just need you to know that they're sleeping together. It's so heavy-handed. We get it. They're polyamorous. They're sleeping together a lot. We got it. I got it last season. And this is the 3rd time now that we've referenced it in the 1st episode. Oh my God, these writers are so horny. Like, I'm telling you, if you are a writer, if you are a creative and you're going to be doing romance, rub one out before you start writing. Otherwise, you will end up with horny crap like this, and it is so freaking cringe. They have inserted this character so freaking hard because they think that the throuple thing is so interesting and they want to put it in your face because that makes the show cool and hip. It doesn't. We've skipped over entire cities in this book. We've left so much out. Why? so we could make room for screwing and threesomes and all the sex and all the extra made up crap that Rafe wants to shove into this show. We got rid of actual book content for this made up garbage. Now we cut to Nynaeve. She's in a kitchen. She's trying to practice in secret because she's embarrassed to fail in front of other people, which is true to her character. And Leandrin walks in. Having been given permission to speak to a novice, she walks in and she basically picks a fight with her to get her angry so that her powers come out. This is not new information. Everybody knows that even Nynaeve knows that she's only able to access her powers when she is extremely emotional. So this scene isn't telling us anything. It's just a chance for Leandrin to succeed where everybody else has failed, because they're trying to give Leandrin, who is just straight up evil, they're trying to give her like a redemption misunderstood villain arc, because all they know how to do is the most basic hackneyed subversions that you've ever seen. It's every trope you can imagine in this show. We get a small scene with the Shinar group burying some of the Shinaran traitors that they found in the village with all the dead people. They're burying them, and Perrin is like, why are we giving them a burial? And Ingtar, whose name you wouldn't know unless you'd read the books, is like, well, they deserve a proper burial, and you never know why people may have reasons to do the bad things that they've done, which is foreshadowing, except it doesn't matter because you don't know anything about this guy. So when he eventually turns out to be a traitor, it won't matter. Because you're going to be like, what? I don't even remember that guy's name. I barely even knew he was leading this band. I thought the guy with the eye patch was actually leading because he got the most screen time. Why does it matter if this guy turns on them? That's how little setup that they've put into this. Also, the guy playing Perrin cannot act. I thought it was just the direction from the first season because they wanted to make him sad with the contrived killing of his wife or whatever. But no, he can't act. That or the director, somebody told him the way to show really extreme emotion is to look like you're holding in your pee and breathe heavily through your mouth. That's how you show that you're upset. And that's what he does all through this season, last season. Every time he's mad, he just... That's how he shows emotion, and it is so god-awfully annoying, and they make Perrin such a whiny baby who is constantly doing that because he's constantly in his feelings. They also want us to believe that he's got this seething hatred for Padan Fain when they didn't even see each other in the first season. Literally, the only time they saw each other was the brief scene where Fain was stealing the box, the golden box that you don't even know what's in it, and Perrin sees him and is like, oh, I'll get you, Khan! And that's the only time they've ever seen each other, and now we're supposed to believe that Perrin is like barely containing his rage, and he's terrified of what he'll do when he finds Fain. What? That doesn't make any sense. We get another peppering of Lan being a bitch and simping for Moiraine, who has completely shut him out, and she's being awful to him and won't tell him anything. And so, in response, he throws stuff and he has a temper tantrum. I was absolutely wrong to praise them for giving Lan more emotion. In the book, he is narrated. All of his emotion is narrated because they're like, his face is like a stone. And when he raises an eyebrow, the narrator of the book is like, that would be like another man having his mouth hanging wide open, because that's how stoic and solemn Lan is. And obviously, if you tried to have an actor do that, it would look so wooden and stupid. So they had him say some things and they had him emote a little more in the series. Well, now they've gone overboard and he's acting like a whiny child who's throwing temper tantrums constantly. But he's the one that's being emotional and throwing tantrums, and Moiraine is being the calm, stoic one. Subversion! You were supposed to help me. You didn't. We get some more time wasting when Egwene and Nynaeve read a letter from Perrin. Remember Perrin, who is hard on the trail of a stolen item that they are dying to get back so it doesn't fall into the hands of evil, but he did have time to write them a letter. The only real point of this scene is for the letter to say things about, man, I wish I could hang out with you guys and Matt, and then we cut immediately to Leandrin, who has Matt in a dungeon, and she reads the letter minus the part about him, and she's like, oh, I keep reading these letters and your name doesn't come in. She's obviously lying to him, trying to make him believe that his friends don't care about him. But we keep going back to this thing with her having Matt in a dungeon, and she's like trying to emotionally torment him, and it goes nowhere. Matt is not supposed to be in jail anyway. He's supposed to be in the White Tower, having been healed of the dagger thing, and he's under surveillance, like they want to make sure that he's not going to run off or touch the dagger again or whatever, but he was never in prison. We're told that it's Beltane, and apparently they light lanterns to remember lost loved ones, and so we see everybody doing that, and in one scene, Perrin has a lantern on a boat, and he almost puts his wedding ring and sails it away, but changes his mind, puts it back in. Like, we're supposed to give any kind of a crap about his feelings for this woman that had 1 minute of screen time in the first episode of the first season. She's completely made up, his fictitious wife that he killed, and we're supposed to believe that why do we care? We don't care about this. This scene means nothing. Finally, 45 minutes into the first episode of this season, we see the main character, Rand, the dragon, the prophesied chosen one, who is going to drive the action for the entire book series. We finally see him for 45 seconds while he's walking through a town and hangs up a lantern and it illuminates his face, and that's all he gets this entire episode. The main character. Finally, we cut back to the Browns, and they're having dinner with their warder and Lan, and he's like, let's wait for Moraine. She's gonna come down this time. I can feel it. She's gonna finally accept me. She's gonna let me out of the friend zone because I'm such a pathetic little simp. And then the Browns start telling him that he is wrong. He's the one that's being selfish. He's the one that's not understanding. He's not listening enough. He's a dumb man who doesn't understand what she's going through, and he needs the one to be the listen more. He needs to reach out. It's all his fault. So he does. He takes her food up to her, but she's not there. She's run off, even though Bail Doman told her there are these guys in hoods, clearly fades. They're following me. She decides to ride off into the night alone with no powers at all. And shockingly, she runs into a fade. Not one, but 4. One of them is coming up on her, and this regular person with no power whatsoever is able to kill a fade. These things are supposed to be terrifying. In the books, when they look at you, you are paralyzed, physically paralyzed with fear. You can't even move. Only the strongest of warriors know how to even move through that fear. It's paralyzing. But she's hiding behind a rock, and with her little belt knife manages to stab one in the face and kill it. Again, they don't die from regular wounds. You have to cut the whole head off. But you know what? Book lore doesn't even matter at this point. Who gives a shit? So she's just a regular, powerless person, but still manages to take one of these fades down. After she kills the one, another one shows up, and it cuts her across the stomach. And right as it's about to kill her, Lan appears and cuts its head off, and he kills it. Then he picks up its sword. 2 other fades show up, and he fights them. I think he takes the third one down, though it's not super clear because it is dark and they're doing the super fast. Like, I don't think any one cut lasts more than half of a second. I think he takes one down, but then they end up putting him down because, of course, he cannot show up and save the day. That's not possible. That's not what men do in this television series. So he's on the ground. He's almost about to die, and whoop! What do you know? The 2 Brown sisters show up for some reason, and their warder actually strikes the killing blow, but only because his sword is glowing, because they're obviously helping him. No man is ever allowed to do anything by himself in this show, ever. Even when he does kill them, when Lan kills a fade, it's because it's distracted because it's about to kill Moraine. When this other warder guy, Thomas I think his name was, when he kills a fade, it's because his sword is super powered with his Aes Sedai powering it up somehow. Whatever. None of this is Moraine's fault, by the way. Her running off alone with no power, not telling anyone, and then putting herself in a life-threatening situation, that is never her fault. She is a strong female character, and she is blameless. Why did this scene have to be changed? Well, it's because the Brown warder and Lan are the ones that save her life. She and Lan were arguing with each other, and they were frustrated, although Lan was not being a whipped puppy dog about it. But she goes off into the garden, and this creature called a Drakgar, which is like a deformed human with bat wings, shows up, and they sing like a song, like a siren song, and it gets her in its siren song, and she's powerless, and then it sucks the souls out of its victim's body. And right as it's about to grab her and kiss her and suck her soul out, Lan shows up and stabs this thing, and so does the other warder guy. They show up and stab it together. And the scene is actually very important. We've lost something here because that scene was scary to the characters, because this Drakgar, they should have felt its presence, but they didn't, and they were like, somebody must have been magically protecting it from us sensing it, and that means that an Aes Sedai is working for the enemy. There are 7 colored Ajas in the White Tower, but there's this mysterious rumored black Aja that nobody talks about, nobody even acknowledges that it's a thing, but the characters are like, it's obviously real, because some Aes Sedai magically protected this creature from us sensing it, and that's why there's gravity to that scene. In this one, it's just random cuts of action, and it means nothing. Nothing is ever accomplished in this show. The scenes have no purpose. This is the most inefficient writing I have ever seen. You have scenes that don't move the story. They don't reveal anything about the characters. They're just there. They're just there to be there. They don't accomplish. If you only have 8 episodes and they're 1 hour apiece, you need to be as efficient with the writing as possible. And we have minutes and minutes that go by where nothing is happening. We're not learning anything. The story isn't moving. It's just content on screen. Episode 2 opens up. Once again, we finally meet our main character, Rand, who's looking out the window, and a mysterious woman comes up and grabs him. He's shirtless. They've obviously been sleeping together because everybody's sleeping together because the showrunners are so freaking horny on this show. And this woman is named Celine. Who is she if you haven't read the book? No freaking idea. After the 3 episodes, you have no clue. Those of you that have read the book, remember, Rand was not part of the horn hunting party. He's just off on his own. So he's in Kyrian, which is where the party ends up. But we were never introduced to Celine. Rand and the real Sniffer never went to this other world. In the books, there are pillars that have symbols all over them, and the ancient Aes Sedai used to be able to use them to travel around the world, and they also used to travel to different dimensions. This book, eventually, I don't know if the show's going to do it or not, because it's so far off book, who knows, but the book series has different dimensions that people go to. There's the dream world, there are dimensions where things might have played out, and the party runs into one such dimension. Rand accidentally goes there, and he sees a world where the bad guys won. And it's a bleak, horrible world. And he meets this woman, Celine. And he rescues her. And she is supposed to be so beautiful that he can't think straight when he's around her. And then they travel on. This character, Celine, in the show is not at all like book Celine. Spoilers, because if you're watching this, you don't want to watch this show. It sucks anyway. Celine is actually this Forsaken woman named Lanfear, who was so in love with the original dragon, and she tried to steal him away from his wife, and when he wouldn't take her, she went crazy, and a lot of the bad things that happened pre-story are because of her. So that's this Celine woman. She's awakened, she's a powerful Forsaken, and she's trying to get Rand to remember this powerful man that he used to be, because she wants him to be in love with her, and she wants them to rule together. She wants him to defeat the Dark One and defeat the good guys, and the two of them will be the most powerful people in the world, and they're going to rule together. And so when she's in the form of Celine, she's constantly like, you need to think about yourself. You need to think about what's right for you. You need to take power, seize it where you can. And any time that Rand is like, no, I'm just a simple farm boy. I don't want to, betray my friends, all this. Anytime he starts doing that kind of stuff, non-powerful, non-kingly stuff, that's when she is like, you know what? I'm going to give you a minute to think about it yourself. And she disappears because she refuses to be with him when he's acting simple and farm boy, and when he's not acting in this powerful ruler kind of way that she wants him to. So in the show, when she's sleeping with him in this shack that he's living in, that he's renting out, that makes no sense whatsoever. The show makes it like she is his landlord and he's renting this place from her and he's paying her in dick somehow. And she would never put up with that ever. Rand has a job. He works in an insane asylum. And we get an entire scene where he's talking to a former Blade Master. Now, this scene tries to do something. The Blade Master recognizes him as an Aielman, and so he freaks out, but he's got memory loss, so he's just remembering stuff that happened a long time ago. But if Rand is so easily recognizable as an Aielman, why does nobody else, like, they bring it up in the show, but it contradicts itself because nobody else recognizes this guy as an Aiel. In the books, lots of people recognize him. We cut back to Moiraine and the Browns and their warders, and Moiraine is still being dismissive toward Lan, and she pretty much makes it clear that she doesn't need him because she is a strong female character. The horn hunting group does find the empty town. Perrin sees events that happened before, but that doesn't even make any sense, but whatever, those are just member berries. Remember that scene happening? Doesn't matter if the characters fit at all, we'll just interchange them. And then Elias says mysterious things to him because the showrunners think that stoic, mysterious characters are so cool, and they are not. They're going through the town and they find the Fade, who has been nailed to the door, and they point out that his boots are scraping all over the door. He was obviously alive when it started happening, and they're like, man, who could do this? And since they need you to know that it was Padan Fain, Perrin just suggests, he's like, do you think this could be Padan Fain? That doesn't make any sense. For all they know, he's just a regular guy. He's just a regular peddler that used to come to their town and then sold them out. But he doesn't have any special powers that would allow him to overpower these terrifying Fades and nail it to a door while it was still alive. But The showrunners are like, well, we want you to know that, so we'll just have a character just kind of say it because, I don't know, might as well. We're back with Rand. He's with the older gentleman. They're taking a walk because he does that every single day, and this guy's a blade master, and he's like encouraging him, like, oh, what would you do to fight an enemy, whatever. And there's another orderly who is just a complete jerk, making fun of the old man, whatever. The only reason that this guy is a jerk is that way we don't feel so bad when Rand attacks him in an alley so that he can do his job and get out to the garden. That's where this guy works. It's all just a ruse for Rand to work his way up in this insane asylum so he can finally get out to the garden. We'll talk about that in just a second. Leandrin has a scene taking Nynaeve to see the healers in the White Tower in the town of Tar Valon. People bring their sick because they know that these Aes Sedai can heal people. So Leandrin takes her and she's like, look at how these people can heal. Look at how, and then you have a scene of them healing somebody. They leave the building and Nynaeve's like, man, that's what I want to do. And Leandrin try to give her a whole end justifies the means sympathetic villain thing where she's like, they just heal sickness that has already happened, but I want to prevent the sickness from ever happening. Yes, villain tropes 101 here. Finally, we meet Elaine, one of Rand's 3 wives, a very big part of the books. Totally cut out of season 1. They didn't have time to introduce her because they were busy doing a warder funeral for some stupid reason. But we finally meet Elaine. You know who we don't meet? Elaine's brothers, because they're men and they do not matter. We're not going to meet Galad. We're not going to meet Gawain. Galad is described as being the most handsome man that anybody's ever seen. These grown women are drooling over him when he's in the practice yard. We're not going to see that. That would not be acceptable in this show. He is supposed to be super strong, very moral. He's just a great guy all the way around, which later on actually ends up being his own undoing, but the showrunners don't give a crap. They don't want to show him in a positive light even for a second. So we don't meet her brothers at all. They're men. They're not important. Only Elaine is important. We didn't display Alanna and her warders enough in episode 1, so we're going to have a meeting between the Mistress of Novices and Alanna. And this scene is freaking hilarious because Alanna, they're trying to make her look powerful. And she's telling the Mistress of Novices, you can't let Leandrin train Nynaeve. She's dangerous. The last battle is coming. It's a very serious conversation. And all through it, her 2 warders are lounging on the ground on pillows and they're like caressing her. They're leaning toward her. Whenever she gets upset, they look at her with concern, like concerned dogs when their master is having a bad day. Oh, whatever you want, Alanna. Do you want to stay? Do you want to go? We're with you. Their whole purpose is to be like jewelry adorning her. Every warder in this show is useless on purpose. They just seek to break these guys down. And the funny thing about this is it doesn't make the women look powerful. They think that this is such a power move, but when you have to break the men down in order to lift the women up, they don't look powerful. It has the complete opposite effect. Alanna doesn't look stately. She looks like a person who surrounds herself with yes men. We get a few scenes broken up, but Nynaeve tracks down Leandrin. She just misses her when she leaves her room. Somebody tells her she just went that way. She follows her through the city, and we discover, oh, Leandrin has a son. And since Aes Sedai lived to be hundreds of years old, her son is old and he's dying and he's in pain. And Leandrin is sympathetic. She's a misunderstood villain. Subversion! The women in the show are not allowed to be evil. Like, none of them are evil. Even the women that own other women as slaves are not shown to be evil or incompetent or anything. We do get one scene. Oh my goodness, we finally get some actual valuable information. We get one scene where Moiraine and one of the Brown sisters are talking a little ways off from a campsite, and there's a little bit of exposition about how one of the boys that was traveling with Moiraine must be the dragon, and they talk about what the White Tower would want to do to them and how that can't be right. The White Tower would want to shut them down, but they need to run free to fight the last battle, and we actually do get some actual exposition. We get some real story. We get the Brown sister talking. She's referencing prophecies about the dragon. So we actually do get about 90 seconds worth of valuable information in this episode. We cut to Rand tracking down the other orderly that was being mean to the old man so that we don't feel so bad when he beats the absolute crap out of him in a back alley. And then we get strands of the power. So like he's losing control and he's going crazy. The only time Rand ever gets to use the power is when it makes him look weak somehow. So he beats the guy up. He loses control. He freaks out. He goes home. He's stressed. Who's there? Celine. They bone. My God, Rafe is so horny. We get tons of scenes in the second episode developing the relationship between Egwene and Elaine, and also just Elaine by herself. We spend 3/4 of this show developing these side characters and not the 3 main characters. If you haven't read this book, there are three main, they call them Taviran in the books. It's this fancy name that just means these guys sort of shape fate around themselves. Things just happen, right? And that plays as the books go on. So these are the three most important characters in the book, Rand being the most important of the three, and they get almost no screen time whatsoever. They don't move the story in any way. They are side characters in their own story. We cut back to Matt in jail. He's trying to tunnel his way out, but he just tunnels into the cell next to him, and who's there? Well, turns out to be Min for some reason. Why is she in jail? Who freaking knows? Nothing in this show has to make sense. Then we waste several minutes of those two just being buddies because the writing in this show could not be less efficient. And before Min leaves for the night, she has a vision of Matt killing Rand. We go back to the campfire with all of the Aes Sedai and their warders, and we get a little bit of backstory between Moiraine and Lan and how they first met. But first, we need to talk about them having sex, and we need to talk about the other warder and his Aes Sedai having sex, and just everybody is so freaking horny in this show. Speaking of sex, we cut back to Rand and Celine in bed together because everybody is screwing all the time. And this scene is used to talk about them missing their previous loves. Celine says she has a man who has her heart and she can't stop thinking about him, but Rand allows her to sort of pretend that he's him. Foreshadowing there. Rand is referencing Egwene when he's like, when I'm with you, I'm able to forget this other woman that I love, and then they're using each other, and the scene just goes on forever. Celine, again, is this mythical, magical, super scary Forsaken called Lanfear, and she was in love with the original dragon. So when she says there's a man that has my heart, that's who she's talking about, and it turns out that man is in Rand. He's that guy, reincarnated, and she freaking knows it. So this scene is just stupid. Leandrin shows up at Nynaeve's door and says, hey, you gotta come with me. There's something about to happen, and I'm so mad at you because you caught me with that, my son. Oh, I'm mad, but I have to do this thing. And then she's gonna go do the accept test where she goes through the arches. Moiraine finally sends Lan away, but first he has to do some more begging. We just need to break this character down so freaking hard. He just needs to look like a whipped, hurt dog the entire time, sad puppy eyes, and she needs to be cold and send him off because she's a strong female character. She killed a Fate all by herself. He couldn't even sense him. He failed her. He's useless. We just need to beat him down as much as possible. We cut back to the group following the horn, and they are under attack. It turns out that Sean Chan are attacking the village. This does not happen, and to be honest, it being shown on screen is so much less effective. I like the way the book did it, because they would come upon villages, this group, and they would see people who were obviously terrified, but they refused to say anything. Everybody was freaked out, but they couldn't tell why. What the heck is going on here? And they finally pieced together that there is some kind of invading force that goes from town to town. They just come in, stomp everybody down, kill a few people, make a big show. They reference that there's like a blackened part of the ground where obviously they group people up and just vaporize people in front of everybody else. They make them swear some kind of oaths, and then they leave. And in the book, the characters get snippets of that, and they kind of piece it together. And that makes this enemy, this mystery enemy, seem so much scarier than they really are because everybody is so scared they can't even talk about them. Instead, we wanted a fight scene. We have Loyal fighting, growling like a bear and throwing people. Once again, this is not Loyal. He's terrified to fight anyone. He's like a pacifist. But nope, he's a big, brawny fighting machine in this show because why bother sticking with the book for anything? The fight is going on, and then the fight is going to be over because the Domain and their Suldam show up. Now, these women that are in the show with the big coats on and like half their faces painted, they are supposed to be owning the women with the little gold pacifier in their mouth. Those women are slaves. They're broken down, badly broken down. They are supposed to be wearing a necklace that is attached by a chain to a wristband that the owner wears, and they can make them feel pain if they want to. They just think it, and they feel whatever it is that person wants them to feel. They own them completely. They break them down so that they're subservient. They don't look up from the ground. None of this is portrayed because the women can't be evil. Women can't even be evil to other women. They can be evil to other men. Moiraine can be horrible to Lan. That's perfectly fine. But women can't be mean to other women. So these slaves are now somehow badass and cool, and they march onto the battlefield. They're not wearing a collar. They don't appear to be enslaved in any way. The only reason you know that they are connected to the other women is because the other women, like, say something. They announce a command, and then the girls with the gold pacifiers wave their arms around, and then magic happens. So they win the battle, and then all the Shan are shown there. Surath is on her big throne, and who's next to her? Shamael. That didn't happen, but who gives a crap? And my wife and I were watching this show, and so often she'd be like, man, I don't remember that. And I kept having to go, that's because it didn't happen. You don't remember half this stuff happening because it didn't happen. Finally, we end the episode with Rand getting his 4th or 5th minute of screen time. He goes into the garden because he is now the caretaker of Logain. Logain is not in the White Tower for who knows why. I mean, it just doesn't even matter. They gentled him, and then they just moved him off to a different city and said, well, we hope you don't get out somehow. Nope. That's perfectly fine. That's like a bad villain plan. We're like, I'm going to leave you in this room and just hope that everything goes to plan. Austin Powers made fun of that crap, and here, they're doing it to Logain. So he's in this garden. Rand finally works his way up to him, and that's how the episode ends. And he's like, I think you and I have a lot in common. That's it. Episode 3, we open up with the accepted test. Nynaeve is going in. She's going into the 3 arches, and they screwed this up so badly, but I will give them one teensy bit of credit. They left her clothes on. In the book, she goes through the test completely naked, and somehow horny Rafe Judkins actually had her leave her clothes on. Impressive. The first arch has Nynaeve as a child, and her dad shows up, and then raiders are there, and they're just attacking them, and her mom shows up, and they're running away from the raiders, and they put her in the basement, and you can hear them getting killed upstairs, and then an arch appears in the basement, and she has to escape through it. So I don't even know what this is supposed to prove. In the book, she is in some kind of big labyrinth, and she's chasing after Shamael, and she can use her powers, and she's throwing power at him, she's exploding rock next to him, and he's always just one step ahead, and it's supposed to be a test of her pride, because she's like, I can get him, I know I can stop him, and then all this evil will be done, I'll have won this great battle before it even starts. But then the arch appears, and she has to decide, do I get my vengeance, do I go after this guy, or do I go back to the arch? And she has to choose the arch. But in the show, they were like, screw that, we'll do something completely different just because we want to be different. The second has her going into town, and everybody's sick, there's a giant plague, and there is Matt's mom doesn't know what she's doing, but she's basically just providing hospice care and taking away people's pain and killing them because she doesn't know how to actually cure them. And she gives Nynaeve a big thing, oh, you ran away, you were supposed to protect us, and I'm just doing the best I can, whatever. And in the book, they had to change it, of course, because in the book had an evil woman. You can't have evil women in the show. In the book, a wisdom came from a different town and pretty much took over everything. And anybody that questioned her, one of their relatives or children or somebody came up with a sickness that she wasn't able to cure, and people were almost certain that she was poisoning people to death, but nobody was willing to question her. And so she was ruling the town with an iron fist. And then in the book, Nynaeve wants to help them, but the arch appears, and she has to basically abandon the people of her town to this horrible tyrant. But can't have that because you can't have an evil woman in this show. The third arch is so freaking stupid. She goes in, and we get a weird, like, point of view shot of her, and everything's misty and you can hardly see, and then she's floating in a red dress and there's mist everywhere, and it's real smash cuts back and forth, real flashes of her and land and her and land and people's voices and whatever, and then she comes out of the arch and she's got blood on her dress, but she can't remember anything. What? The reason that they couldn't go with the book version was because then she wouldn't be as much of a strong female character. See, in the book version, the final arch is her living her wildest fantasy. That is Lan, who is reinstated as the king of his kingdom, and everything is happy, and she's with him, she's his queen, they have a child. It's so happy. Everything's wonderful. That's her ultimate fantasy. And then the arch appears, and she's like so heartbroken because she's losing the thing that she wants the most. But the showrunner's like, no, a strong independent woman can't want a man. She can't, her fantasy can't be being a wife and a mother and just living in a kingdom and being provided. That's not what a woman that's a strong female character doesn't fantasize about things like that. That's ridiculous. So we have to do something completely different. She has to be in charge no matter what. So it turns out the third arch is actually a dream within a dream. Very impressive. She leaves the arch, and they're like, hey, you're actually a sister now. And she's like, screw you guys. I don't want anything to do with this tower if that's the kind of stuff that I have to leave behind. And she runs outside, and she does indeed meet Lan. And he is backed. He's a whipped dog now because Moraine sent him away, and he doesn't know what to do with himself because he has zero agency whatsoever. And he's like, I heard you were undergoing the test. And she said, I left the tower. I have to go back to my village. And he's like, please let me go with you. I just want to follow you anywhere you go because I'm just a dumb man that doesn't know what to do with myself. And if I can't follow Moraine around. I want to follow you around because we have to break Lan down as much as possible in this show. While they're reconciling and kissing and she's absolutely still in charge and he's going to follow her back to Emmons Field, what do we see behind her but the arch? Oh, she's actually still inside. It's crazy. She misses the arch. We cut back and we see that in reality, she doesn't come out of the arches, and the women that were administering the test, they're very upset because she's presumed dead, and after the two of them leave, Leandrin holds it together, but then she throws her jar, and she's very upset because she believed in Nynaeve because she's actually not as bad as you think, guys. She's got feelings. All of that took 20 minutes. That is before the title of the show rolls. That is the intro. 20 full minutes, and we're not even done with that. We skipped whole cities. We cut out entire portions of storylines, but we added in 20 minutes of her doing the arches. So after the title, the real episode actually begins, and we are back with the horn hunting crew with Perrin and Loyal and them, and the other guy whose name you don't even know at this point unless you've got subtitles on, and the Sean Chan are in charge, and they're making people bow, and one of the Damani is pointing out women that can channel. In the book, they put the collar on them to see if they can, but in this one, she's so cool. She's a slave. She's broken down. She's made to work and work the power against her will, but she struts right up to people and points out women that she knows are also channelers for some reason. She looks so cool. She's just strutting about. They don't have a collar, nothing. When they go in front of Surath, her handler bows and she doesn't. What in the hell is happening here? Uno does not like the fact that they're picking women out of the crowd and taking them off to somewhere, and he's holding his belt knife, and somebody notices that he's looking a little too fierce, so when they say who's going to be the first one to swear the oaths, one of the guards goes up to Uno and he gets voluntold to go up front and swear the oaths. Something else giving me hope for the show is that they haven't talked about the other realms, like where Rand goes and sees what might have been and all those different shades of reality. So maybe this show is one of those realms, and then we'll just at the end of the episode we'll snap back to reality, and then he'll wake up from them traveling, like, you know, that couple of month period where they tried to travel and they saw all different alternate versions of reality. Maybe this whole show is just one of those fleeting versions, and we can pretend that none of this garbage ever happened. So they walk Uno up. He refuses to say the oaths or whatever, and so he gets his face gets impaled on a spike. It's very, very gruesome. He was a very cool male character, so naturally he had to die. We go back to Rand and Logain, and Logain is like, dude, I'm on to you. I can see your red hair. I know what you are. I saw you in the town when I was being taken in. I know that you can channel. I know what you're here for, so just ask me the freaking question that you want to know. And Rand is finally like, fine, how do I control it? And Logain's like, well, first you got to get me a special bottle of wine. So that just provides an excuse for Rand and Celine to sneak into a fancy party to steal a bottle of wine. And while they're at that party, this is another scene that actually does prove useful because we don't have a lot of time to cover the politics of the world. I mean, the show is kind of short. We don't have time to cover certain things. So this party allows one character to walk up to Rand and also Celine later to explain the kind of political games that these people play. And the hunt for the horn is not real. It's just a way to getting the poor people out of the foregate. And these people at the party, they know that Rand and Celine have crashed the party, but since they're all so politically minded, they're trying to figure out how they can use them to play each other and win this game, that this stupid, noble political game that they always play. So that scene serves that purpose. On his way to meet Celine from Logain, he does go out into the foregate, which is the poor part of town, and we see an actual gleeman. He's telling a story. He's got the patchwork cloak on. So that means the people that made this show knew what a gleeman was supposed to look like, and they purposely made Tom look stupid and can't sing on purpose. They screwed that character up on purpose because they knew what it was supposed to look like, and they did it for a nobody for 3 seconds. Before they go to the party, Celine also finally gives us some information about the Horn of Valir, and there is a hunt for the horn that has been called, and we get a little information about that. They do it every couple hundred years, and she finally tells us what this thing does, that it calls back the heroes of the dead. The third episode, we're 2.5 hours into this season, an entire group one of the 4 different groups we keep going to, they're hunting for this thing, and we, the audience, haven't been told what this thing even is. We cut to Elaine and Egwene, and they're going to visit Nynaeve, but they run into Miriam, the mistress of novices, instead, and she delivers the bad news. Nynaeve didn't come out of the arches, and Egwene is sad, and we get emotional response. None of this is... There are so many scenes in the show, like this one, that could be deleted entirely, and the show wouldn't change one bit, because we don't learn anything. So much inefficient writing. So many scenes where we don't learn anything, nothing is happening. It could be completely cut out, completely deleted, and you wouldn't miss anything. Leandrin frees Matt now that Nynaeve is dead. For some reason, she keeps saying that, oh, I believed in her, I'm so sad because Nynaeve is gone. All of their interaction has been nothing but malice and anger and disdain, but she's sad now, and she lets Matt go, and she's like, I was busy messing with you, and I could have been helping that. Like, we're trying to do this sympathetic thing for Leandrin, and it's really, really stupid. We continue to give her a sympathetic background because she lets Matt out, and she says, oh, people need each other, and right now, Egwene needs you. Like, suddenly she cares about people, but before he leaves, she does tear him down some more and call him selfish and a prick, and he only cares about himself because you can't let the men off scot-free. You gotta continually tell them how stupid they are. Then we cut to Leandrin, who is still sad, and she's burning Nynaeve's ring, and Egwene shows up, and she's mad, and she's like, this is your fault, which, yes, it absolutely is. She pushed her to do something she wasn't ready for. And then Leandrin walks her off, and they have a little stern face-off, and she's like, oh, Nynaeve was powerful, and you need to know your place. And then Egwene says, you have no idea how high I can fly. Well, no, that was The Office. But her line is, you have no idea what I'm capable of, which is pretty stupid all the same. So Rand and Celine go to the party. They get the bottle of wine, but Rand runs away because he's mad because he finds out the hunt is fake and it's just rich people finding a way to get rid of poor people. He delivers the bottle of wine to Logain, and Logain tells him the secret. You can't control it. There's nothing to do. Ha 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 ha. And he laughs like a crazy person. This whole scene is just useless. It ate up screen time for nothing. Rand learned nothing. We learned nothing. This entire time, Rand is just, he looks desperate and weak, scrabbling on for anything, anyone who can help him, and he has zero agency whatsoever. Matt almost goes to talk to Egwene. He sees her, but then, before she notices him, he turns and leaves, because remember, he's a piece of crap, just like his father. Remember, we needed to assassinate his dad's character, too? It wasn't enough just to make Matt look like a piece of crap. So he goes back to the prison cell, gets Min out, and they escape together. But we find out Min is actually playing him. She's working for Leandrin for some reason. I don't even know how to compare this to the book. Like I want to do this review of like, here's what happened and here's what happened in the book. But the things in the show that are happening they're not even based in the book. They only share names of characters that were in the books. The scenes themselves have no comparison. There is no way to compare these two things. Cut to a wagon where Perrin is inside. Apparently after Uno was killed, they rounded everybody up because they were looking too fierce. They wouldn't bow fast enough. And Shamael is there in the wagon with him, and they have a little conversation. He knows who Perrin is and lets him live. He knows he's one of these 3, special people, these Ta'veren, and lets them live anyway. And he also tells him, the more you become like a wolf, the more you belong to me. Which maybe is just him trying to trick Perrin into not being like a wolf. I don't know, because the wolves hate all dark things. So if he's trying to trick him, we don't have enough information as an audience to know that that's a trick because they haven't explained anything to us. So this scene just comes off as stupid with this guy knowing he has an enemy in chains in front of him and is like, I'm going to keep watching and make sure you're progressing. Progressing what? These showrunners think they need to add mystery to this story, and you don't need it. There's a little bit of mystery in the books, but really not that. It's not a mystery story. It's not a detective story. It's a fantasy story. We're finding things out as they happen. They're not leaving. There's no mystery boxes. They think it's so clever, and it is not. We cut to Rand, who's going back to his apartment after meeting with Logain and wasting a bunch of time finding out nothing. And hey, who's there? Celine. Guess what they do? They screw again. Haha, shocker. But we do get a little peek of the real Celine here, because she's like, you have the fancy coat on, leave the coat on. She calls him my lord, and she's trying to encourage that, dominant sir thing, right? So they have sex, and then he has the power flowing around him, and he loses control. And he wakes up, and it's still flowing through him, and he accidentally burns the apartment down. We cut back to Egwene, who is in the arch room, and she's trying to activate the 3rd arch to get Nynaeve a chance to come back out of it. And Elaine shows up, and she gives us some exposition that people have tried. Lots of people have been lost in these things, and nobody ever comes out, and nobody can activate them, and whatever. And Egwene still wants to try, and she's like, I tell you what, I'll get some blankets, let's just sleep here, and then maybe she'll come out, right? Trying to comfort her. Finally, to end the episode, we do see Nynaeve living a fantasy life. She's back in Emond's Field. She does end up with the daughter. Perrin is there, hanging out with her, spending time with her daughter. Matt shows up. He's well dressed. It seems like he's coming back from a trip or something. He's obviously well to do, and they're all hanging out. And they're like, hey, let's go inside and have some dinner. Lan is making dinner because they think that's clever. And then after they have dinner, she brings the dishes over. Lan's doing the dishes because they think that looks soft. Subversion! This lovely dinner is interrupted, however, when Trollocs attack. Nynaeve runs her daughter to the basement and grabs a hand axe. She runs upstairs to find a dead Trolloc. Obviously, Lan got one of them. She goes outside with her axe and takes a Trolloc down. She cuts it in the back, rolls over, and chops its legs out. Because if Lan can get one, she can get one too. We cut over. Perrin is dead. Matt is dead. Lan is fighting two Trollocs, but they stab him. Everybody dies except her. She goes Super Saiyan and has a big power explosion and blows them all away. And while she's holding Lan and he dies, her daughter comes out. She picks the daughter up, and her power explosion reactivated the tower reactivated the arch from inside. So there's the glowing arch again. She grabs her daughter. She runs through, and she pops out the other side just in her shift, and it's bloody. And there's Egwene and Elaine waiting for her. They're asleep, and she starts screaming, and that's how the episode ends. This final bit with Nynaeve is another few minutes. Nearly half of this third episode is that. Her in the arches. 25 minutes, I counted, is stuff involving her in these arches. There you go. There's the 3 episodes. Very little actually happened. We don't know what we're doing. We don't know what we're chasing. We don't have good motivations for anyone to do anything. Guys, I'm going to be honest, I don't even know if I'm going to continue watching this. It sucks so bad. It took me all weekend to watch this show. I watched one episode Friday night, and then I wanted to watch some One Piece because I didn't want to watch any more of this. And I only kept watching because I knew I was going to do a review of it. If I didn't have this to do with you guys, I wouldn't have watched this show. It's so boring. It's so far off book. It goes out of the way to put down its male characters, which doesn't make the women look strong. It just makes the men look weak. It doesn't even achieve this stupid feminist purpose that Rafe thinks he has, that he wants to simp for all the women in the world. None of it is effective. The show is garbage on almost every single level. The writing is inefficient. The acting is horrible. The costumes don't look good. The sets don't look good. Nothing is working about this show. We are 3 hours into this season, and we haven't gone anywhere. This is garbage television. This is a garbage adaptation. This is a show made for nobody. If you've seen it, what do you think about it? If you haven't seen it, what wild theories do you have about what crazy crap they're going to do next? I don't know if I'll review it anymore, but if I do, I'll see you then. I appreciate you watching.